change the CSS for our notes, because now our linkiness makes these things underlined. The underlining in and of itself isn't particularly hard to change. But there's some other kind of weirdness that we could run into a problem with later. Let's look at, I think we didn't have a note CSS, right? Just note list CSS. So it's all going to be in here. So we have all these rules for the LI. Now we have links outside of the LI. Is our border situation working? It looks like we don't have borders on any of them. Let's add a new note. Gosh, think that works? It did, but look. The ID didn't change. So how should we change that? It's in the sidebar. What happens is we reset current note. What should maybe happen instead is that should be a link that sends us to the route that has no ID in it. Make sense? Now this doesn't need to have an active thing on it. We're not going to have a style for active. It's not like it should be a different color if it's already a new note. So instead of this button, we could we could just wrap the button in a link. Actually, that would probably be fine. So we need link instead of nav link because we don't care whether it's active or not. So we need to import link from React router DOM. Link to /notes. And I don't want to need to have an on-click on here anymore either. So this button should all be inside that link. So we'll put our closing link tag here. Oops, I made that self-closing accidentally. So I don't want to have reset current node in here. So I'm going to get rid of that. And when I call sidebar inside main, I don't want to pass that on. So now sidebars JSX just got simpler. So now these two are both really simple. We're just passing one prop each. What happens? That still works. Well, my button got tiny because my CSS changed. Click. Yay, the URL changed. This didn't change. That's okay. We'll figure that out. So the situation is that if the new ID isn't there, if there is no ID, it should be a blank one, right? So if there is an ID, do all that, and then maybe else. This.props.reset current note. It's getting all the props that are passed to main, and reset current note was definitely getting passed to main because we were passing it on to sidebar. Yay, everything broke. I don't have any notes anymore. Maximum call stack size succeeded. So that's going to change state, which is going to call component will receive props over and over and over again. So it's not just if it's blank. It's if it's blank and it wasn't blank before. So else if this.props.currentNote.id. So if the new one doesn't have an ID, the new URL doesn't contain an ID, and the current note does have an ID, then we want to clear it out. Otherwise, we don't need to do anything. If there's already no ID there, then we don't need to reset it. Now no loop. Click, changes, hit plus, URL changes, and it clears it out. Can I still add stuff? Ah, now I got a problem. It's back to doing this trick. So what's up with that? What about delete? What does that do? Well, it does part of what we want, but it shouldn't stay at that URL. So what's the problem here? If we have a blank one, we're at the URL/notes. As soon as we start typing, that note, the current note, has an ID, right? But the URL doesn't have an ID in it. And it says, uh-oh, we just changed, you must have just hit new note. Because we went from having an ID, from not having an ID to an ID. Ah, you clicked on one of these. I better change everything. Oh, no, right. It doesn't, there's no, yeah, it thinks because there's no ID in the URL that we're actually changing from one with an ID. It thinks we clicked this, basically. When what really happened is we created a new one, and that's the one we want to keep editing. So what does that mean? When we save a new one, if we just went from not having an ID to having an ID, we need to redirect to the route that contains that ID. Make sense? So then the ID will be in the URL, and it won't freak out and think it needs to clear it. Told you we were going to get hardcore with our routes today. So I don't want to redirect too soon. If I put the redirect in here, I won't have updated my state. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say let should redirect equal false. Why let? Because I'm going to change it to true under certain circumstances. So if the note that we're passing in is a brand new note, in other words, it doesn't have an ID yet, we should set the note ID, and we know that we need to redirect. So then after we've gone through all this, if should redirect then what do we want to do? Well, I can't just put the JSX tag in here. This isn't a render function. But we do have this.props.history, which I think you played with yesterday, right? Did you push something onto the history? So we could do that. This.props.history.push. And again, I'll use a template string with backticks instead of quotes, because I'm going to put the node ID in the middle of it. So now I want to redirect to /notes/note.id. So the ID of my new note. Don't need to push it onto the history if I'm already there. Let's try this again. We're on /notes. We have a brand new note. We start typing. Yay. If I hit new note again, creates another new one. Yay. We did it. And what happens if we delete? Clears out the form, but the URL stays the same. So that shouldn't happen, right? So remove note, do all this stuff, reset the current note and all that. Actually, we shouldn't need to reset the current note manually. We should just be able to say this.props.history.push/notes. And note form will clear it out for us, right? So now note form is entirely responsible for managing what the current note is. So in fact, we shouldn't even need to set it here, should we? Unless that's a copy of the, might not have the right value. Let's try it out. Ideally, it would figure this out. So first of all, when I delete one, let's delete one of these meaningless ones. Oh, I got a problem. ID of null. Yeah. What did I do that for? Where did I do that? Const note navlink to this did I, when I removed the note, I waited until state was updated. So it should, that note should be out of, should be out of state by the time I redirect. And when it's out of state, that should remove it from the list. Not just change it to null. It shouldn't be in the list anymore. It shouldn't be in the array. Only after we finished syncing with Firebase, though, actually. No, because we set state. It sets this to null. So since we can't call delete on this anymore because Firebase won't catch it, this will make it sync with Firebase and remove the note. And then once Firebase has done that, then the note will no longer be in the notes array. But for now, it's still in the notes array for a moment, which makes it kind of freak out as it tries to render that note as part of the list. It's kind of strange. What was here before? Anything? Oh, reset current note. Right, it was doing it manually. And that should have totally been like this. So let's see if we leave that, if we no longer have that problem. No, we still have the problem. If I did it the wrong way that I did before where I was doing it synchronously, then we don't have the problem. So actually waiting until state is set screws that up. Because of what I described. So the state will, for a moment, still have this in it. It'll just be null. And that's going to refresh the note list, and it's going to try to render a null note. So we could check for a null note in there, but it'd probably be better if we just called this before we set state. Then after we've set state, then we could this dot props dot history dot push just notes. So a lot of moving pieces here. And it's important to test all these little edge cases. Okay, go to one of these, click delete, note form clears, and we are back on notes. See why that was worth doing? This doesn't exist. So if we delete, we don't want to still be on the page of an ID that doesn't exist, right? That should be impossible. Yay, all the things work, we think. Yay. Yay. No, we don't like high fructose. Deleted. So now all that's broken, it really is our sidebar button is way, way, way too small. And it is noon, but let's see if we can fix that real quick. Okay, app, main, note form, sidebar. I feel like we changed a couple of things. The last time we committed was adding nav links to the notes in the list. So we did a couple things. We made sure that when we create a new one, it redirects to that ID. And we made sure that when we delete one, it redirects to a URL without an ID. So redirect appropriately after save and remove. That's what we did. Good commit messages are important. All right, now we can make a button a little prettier.